local DC justice system. And at the 2 jails alone, there are about 3,624 beds. The goal of these recommendations would be to end up with a facility that has a range, one facility, one supportive facility that has potentially the capacity to house 2,900 to 3,800 people in one new facility. So we really want to take a new direction with this and have a place where everybody is learning and growing and being serviced at home. The next slide shows the themes for all of the different recommendations coming out of the Facilities and Services Committee. We had 79 recommendations, but they generally hung in these 3 areas. One is, and these recommendations were based on consultations with people who had lived experience with serving time in the facilities, with their families, with correctional and safety experts, with practitioners in the field. We listened to a lot of different voices to come up with these recommendations. One, we don't want this place to look like a traditional jail. Think about it differently. The emphasis is on deinstitutionalizing people, or just deinstitutionalizing, using an approach of deinstitutionalization toward this facility. And all of the programming and all of the design, all of that is guided by considerations of safety and care and growth and improvement of people's lives, and protecting not only the community, but protecting residents and protecting people who work in the facility. The second principle is not relying on solitary confinement as a tool to keep people safe. A lot of times the more vulnerable populations are segregated and housed in the context of spending 23 hours a day in a cell for their protection. But we know that that's not necessarily the only way to protect people, and it's certainly not the best way. It's almost punishing them for being vulnerable. So we wanted to emphasize care and safety and growth for everybody and protect everybody. And we believe that that can be done when you have a better design in place. And so those 79 recommendations go to things like services, and the physical plant and location and size and how things relate to each other. And you can see that in that ultimate report that we sent out. And then for the next slide, we know that this is going to take a lot of resources. That's one reason the jail is in the condition that it is. I think it opened in 1976, and it's, except for the central treatment facility, it's kind of the same facility, it's almost the same facility as it was back then. Probably some technology changes given the internet and other technology, cameras, things like that. But it is still this concrete hulk over in Southeast DC near the Anacostia River. And it's going to take a lot of time and resources from the city to make a change in the direction that we believe, or we are recommending that the city go in. There's going to be time for planning, time for building, time to develop community support, time for creating alternatives for responding to issues that the jail and the criminal justice system has traditionally been used to support, and just being very intentional about it. You can see from this set of charts the timing and how the different parts of the plan relate to each other. And ultimately, that within 10 years, the plan and the recommendation is that with these policy changes, that ultimately there would be no need for the use of the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 10 years. And everyone who's serving a sentence would be back home, and very few people, compared to historical trends, would actually be living in these facilities. That more people would be getting services in the community and having their needs responded to, and making the kinds of changes in their lives that would help us all, and changes in other aspects of the system that would help reduce the burden of the criminal justice system on minority and poor people in the District of Columbia. So I will, at this point, turn it over to Nakia and to Afeni, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Avis. Can y'all show some love to Avis in the chat? Um, Avis, I know that you were a part of the task force in creating these. I know that this has been a long process and it was not easy. And so appreciate you for joining us for our last session.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I see some love. I see some hearts. Thank yous. Okay, I see some cheers for you. That's really awesome. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to talk about um, abolition. You know that Working Families Party is a part of the Defund the Police Coalition, which is an abolitionist coalition. And so we're just going to talk to you about some principles for folks that are considering these recommendations and also considering prison abolition. Can we get the next slide? So initially, we want to share how, the prison industrial complex is exists to control and maintain power and eliminate particular groups. And really know that like these systems impact everyone. And so what I mean by that is throughout its reach, the prison industrial complex helps and maintains the authority of people who get their power through all the isms of the world, right? Racial, economic, and other privileges. And there are many ways that this power is collected and maintained. So some ways is by creating mass media images that keep alive stereotypes of people of color, poor people, queer people, that really show us as this quote unquote criminal, quote unquote delinquent or deviant. This complex power is also maintained because it earns huge profits for private companies that end up dealing with prisons and police forces. It can also be maintained by, you can earn political gains for being tough on crime, but for being a tough on crime politician. It can also increase the influence of the prison guard and police unions. And it really, if you've ever fought for justice, for housing, for economic justice, anytime you try to reorganize power in the US, often the prison industrial complex is there to eliminate your dissent, right? And tell you that you can't protest, that you can't be out there and try and make these demands. And so those are some of the ways that the complex impacts us in many different ways. And when we're fighting for abolition, we want to name that there isn't just one alternative or one replacement of jails and prisons. And if we're going to prioritize abolitionist reforms in WFP, we have to prioritize ones that oppose adding funds and validity to the prison industrial complex. Can you go to the next slide? And I'll pass it to Afeni.
So actually, you got to go back one because that was the right slide. Who are abolitionists? Outspoken opponents of abolishing the prison industrial complex typically portray abolitionists as politically and active academics who sprout impossible ideas. None of this could be further from the truth. Abolitionists come from all backgrounds and most are pretty politically active. From bail reform to strategic electoral intervention and mutual aid, prison abolitionists are steadily at work in their communities, employing the tactics of harm reduction and lobbying against legislation, defending the rights of prisoners in solidarity with those organizing for themselves on the inside, and working forward for a vision of social transformation. Abolition is not impossible, but it isn't unimaginable. And it comes down to conversations like this one in the community of how we actually get there. Prison industrial complex abolition is a political vision with the goal of eliminating imprisonment, policing, and surveillance, and creating lasting alternatives to punishment and imprisonment. Abolitionists also look to end sources of violence, while police and prisons have a monopoly on violence and violent tactics. So right now we're flying the plane as we build it. Organizing is how we're going to bring this all together, and bringing more people into this movement is also very important. We must actively work on dismantling these systems, organizing outside of the government, and directing funding to these communities that need it most. We figured out by working to get there, it's all about practice, but it's not about evasion.
Well said. Can we go back to the last slide, please? Thanks. So what we're saying here is that the message, we want you to be in practice. We're not here to be perfectionists, and we're not fighting for purism, but it's the fact that we want to be in practice in our abolition. We also want to be honest. The message of abolition requires honest language and new definitions. So we don't permit those who are in power to control our vocabulary, using system language to call prisoners inmates, or punishment treatment, denies prisoners the reality of their experience and makes them captives of the old system. Our own language and definitions empower us to define the prison realistically. An abolitionist revolution can be a series of reforms, as well as we must keep pushing the system until it breaks. And so we ask that folks engaging in these recommendations consider to be in practice, to be honest, and to be brave as you prioritize recommendations for WFP. Next slide. Awesome. So I'm not going to go through each of these questions, but as I think this is a great time, if you want to take a note of these questions, we'll also send these slides out to you. But we are looking for people who are willing to advocate on many different demands, from defund the police to decarceration. And whether we are abolitionists in training, or neither, we can all benefit from reflecting on these questions when advocating for policing and prison reform. And so if you're looking to impact WFP priorities and be in practice together, can we go to the next slide? You can sign up at tinyurl.com/DCWFP volunteer. And we also are uplifting, we do this till we free us, some things that folks who are a part of WFP are really interested in doing are reading this book together as we advocate for different reforms this season. So thank you so much for hearing us. And we are gonna go into some Q&A. I think we have about, actually, Bailey, let us know how much time we have left for Q&A.
Yeah, I think we have about 6 or 7 minutes.
Awesome. Awesome. So for Q&A, I'm looking to see. Oh, right. There's no real slide for that. So we'll stay right here. So if folks have questions, we're happy for you to drop them in the chat. And also if the question is for a specific person, especially if you have a question for Avis, make sure to say, this, my question's for Avis, so that way we can direct it properly.
So right now, I guess we're about to do the journal and jam. It'll take 5 minutes. Basically, you're gonna take 5 minutes and talk about, figure out what like the things that Avis spoke about, the things that Nakia and Afeni talked about. Let's be honest, we need to really.
Hey, Ty.
Yes, ma'am.
We got one question in the chat. So maybe before we go into journal and jam, let's just, maybe we'll just hear this quick question and then we'll go right back to you. Does that feel good? Okay, lit. And Aida, I see this question and I see you needed some time to write it out because it seems you're like specific to the point. So the question is, what are we doing to make societal cultural changes to make this transformation sustainable? If change the jail, but don't change police interaction or prosecutorial approaches, et cetera, might be setting the transformation up to fail. Thank you for that. Does anyone in our panel want to take a stab at that? I'm curious if each one.
This is Avis Buchanan. I can answer. There are other initiatives in place consistent with reform in the criminal justice system, things that are unique or at least specific to the District of Columbia on the prosecution side, on the funding side, on the police side, and on the release side. For example, there has been a big movement in the DC Council in the last 2 or 3 years to offer new opportunities for people to get resentenced. Younger people who were younger at the time that their crimes were committed. A new amendment goes into effect in May, and people can seek release from the court. He asked the court to consider the adjustment that they've made. So there's already this emphasis on reducing the number of people in institutions. And there's a sentiment, I think, throughout the city that we need to do things differently, that what has been done for years and years isn't working. There's a police reform commission that is making recommendations considering police practices. There are legislative initiatives, and at least the city has a fairly progressive prosecutor, and the Office of the Attorney General. Of course, the Biden administration will be selecting a new U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, so we will have to see what policies come out of that appointment. But there is a lot of movement in different places to try to bake these principles into the normal operations of this city.
If I can just add too, if you think back to the slide Avis had up with the timeline and the 3 stages, building the new facility is one of the 80 recommendations that the task force made. And it starts in stage 2, because stage 1, those first 5 years really are focused on this, on exactly what you said, on changing our laws and our policies to reduce populations and to better support people in the community, but also talking about the cultural and societal changes that we need to change in our hearts and our minds to better support people here in the community and keep each other safe. And when we go into the advocacy groups later tonight, one of the groups is going to be talking about relational organizing and talking to your neighbors and really starting to build out that support network. So I really appreciate you bringing that question up.
I also see a follow-up question. Okay, yes, no problem. And the question about, other initiatives to change the mindset. Yes, we are going to go into our breakout sessions. So no, you are going to go into breakout sessions. In about 2 minutes, you're going to do a little personal journaling. And then we're going to go into 20 minutes, I think, or 25 minutes where folks can also talk amongst ourselves. But because not everyone can be in a breakout room with Avis, we wanted to give you the opportunity to ask Avis any specific questions. So is there anything around the changing the mindset of the current players since their roles will look different?
Changing mindsets, of course, is a big challenge. You really need to change behavior as opposed to mindsets. And I think that's what some of these initiatives are focused on. I do agree that mindsets change behavior, but other than sensitizing people to things like implicit bias and sensitizing them to the priorities of this city and having them act accordingly, I don't know that you can really change a mindset that's not predisposed to think the way you want them to.
Right. I guess it also means holding folks accountable. And I guess one thing I'd love to share with folks, I think I see people from different organizing spaces on the call. We know that for the last month, we have gone through maybe 80 different recommendations. And so there's many different recommendations that people can be active on, many different, yes, 80. many different things that people can get active on, many other things that people can hold folks accountable to. There's a lot of key players, there's a lot of different targets, and I know that our folks are excited to talk with you during our advocacy breakout about that. Awesome. So maybe this is a good time to do a little journal jam. So I'm gonna ask our lovely Biola to put some music on for us, and folks can jam out for about 5 minutes. And when we come back, you're gonna be put into breakout rooms to share with the group what you jammed on. Feel free, Tyrone, if you would like to talk, walk people through the questions.
I got you. I got you.
I think you muted yourself, love. Tyrone?
Yes, Kiki, I apologize. So basically, I apologize. I had to get my screen back. Um, well, basically, we're gonna be using these 5 minutes to basically fall back on basically what Avis, McKeer, and Afeni talked about. Like, let's be honest. Like, if y'all got something that we missed out on, it'll be a good time to put it in the chat as well. But I also want, if y'all listening, I wanted to put something in y'all mind back. A question that Ada had put in the chat. I think it was her first question. Like, what are we doing to make social cultural changes? And for real, like y'all name the main things, you know what I'm saying? But I think that we also making big progresses on a smaller level as well with these organizational programs, you know what I'm saying? Like Open City Advocates, the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. These are programs that I was in that, you know what I'm saying, was able to help me grow, you know what I'm saying? So if we had more programs out here for the youth that's coming up that teach them, you know what I'm saying, like financial literacy, credit management, life skills, you know what I'm saying, how to be a man for real. Even females, they got like female cohorts where that they have females, teach female things, you know what I'm saying? And
Hi.
coming from an environment where, I was adopted. So, if I wasn't adopted, I probably will be way worse off because my siblings were way worse off. So to be grateful for the program that I got back from CCE, the National Reentry Network at Open City Advocates, we need to be advocating for more programs like this. You know what I'm saying? I think though they making the steps. You know what I'm saying? They're starting small. You know what I'm saying? Because let's be honest, Rome wasn't built in a day. So we're gonna get. We gotta have faith. You know what I'm saying? It starts with faith, and it starts with the inner self. You have to turn to yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Hi, I feel you deeply, and you are so passionate. I want to still make sure people have the chance to write. We have about 4 minutes left, so we're going to put on some music and let people just do their own personal journaling of how they're feeling and how they're reflecting on it, okay?
That's a bet. I love y'all.
All right, y'all. All right, Biola, if you could put on some music, we're going to come back in a couple minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So I hope that you're able to jot down some feelings, some thoughts. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So, is it me? I don't think it's me. All right, it's me then. So y'all, we are about to get into our breakout rooms where we can talk with each other. We're gonna come back at 7:02. And we will be talking about sharing reflections from journaling, what resonates between the ideas we heard and what does not. What do we want to learn more about?
I really enjoyed having time to talk in small groups with you all. So we're going to do it again. This time we're going to break out into groups based on what kind of advocacy you want to be a part of. So we're going to take 20 minutes and you get to choose your group. The options are budget advocacy and legislative advocacy. And those are two that we had last week for those of you who are a part of those groups. Then we'll also have one on relational organizing and another on embracing activism and finding your inner activist. So we're going to go ahead and open up some of these groups in just a minute, and you can choose where you are going to fit. Relational organizing, great question. Relational organizing is talking with people that you already know and organizing with them.
Yep. And people who join Finding Your Inner Activist know, or embracing your activism, know we are not going to do any zodiac reading. But if you're like, I'm interested in why activism, I'm not really sure where I fit, I want to learn more about activism and direct action and things like that, you can do the Find Your Inner Activist. Okay, I already see someone in my room, so I'm gonna hop. I will see y'all in the different rooms. To my group who dropped off in the middle, I appreciate y'all for your patience. And just if you didn't get to, there is, we're gonna drop the advocacy toolkit in the chat again. If we could just drop that in the chat. If you're looking for ways to be an advocate, there are groups you can join. You can join WFP as a volunteer. You can join CCE's mailing list, and you can join Returning Citizen. Council of Reentry. You can see all of those links and information from these breakout sessions there. So here we go. And now that we are coming to the end of our evening, we want to make sure that we get your feedback. We want to make sure that we say goodbye. We've been doing this for 4 weeks. I appreciate y'all for being in this with us, for struggling with us. And we really want you to join us in however you see fit, and that you take action this budget season and throughout the rest of the year to transform jails and justice. We're gonna close out. See you next time, everyone. Good night. Thank you.